Did what Sean does, wins games, especially in the regular season against Tampa Bay. The Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone ESPN. This segment is brought to you by Sound and Communications, the leader in audio and visual equipment for businesses, churches, and sports facilities in Mississippi and the Southeast. SoundcomAV.com, Sound and Communications. They can design and install your next audio-visual equipment and project. We want to welcome in Mike Detillier, Saints LSU Insider, WWL Radio TV, New Orleans. And Mike joins us on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. Mike, you hate to see what happened to Jameis Winston. What do you think the conversations will be like the next 3 months here? I mean, you would have to believe that experiment is over. What do you think the Saints will start to look to do?
Well, Sean kind of hinted at it, that, that's the $6 million question, and he'll worry about that at the end of the year. But it is the interesting conversation. I always felt the quarterback of the future for the Saints was not on the roster. And I know he thinks a lot of Ian Book. He really does. You can hear it in his tone. You can hear it in his voice, how he speaks about Book. But is he ready? Is he the guy that can drive the train all the way through? So it is certainly going to be the talk of the off season on where it goes with this football team for 2022. But Sean's, he's innovative, finds a way to win. He has built this team around defense, special teams, and hitching his offensive wagon to Alvin Kamara. And so the quarterback part, I think, is still very much in question for 2022. Because Jameis, I think, really believed that he could have a big season and sort of cash it in and sort of have Sean believe he's the guy for the future. But now with this major injury, I think that's certainly up in the air.
Mike Detillier on the Out of Bounds Show. Okay, you're right. Sean is special as a coach to be able to win all sorts of different ways in the NFL and with several different quarterbacks the last few years, including Teddy Bridgewater, Taysom, Drew, Trevor Siemian, Jameis, so on. Pretty impressive. What's realistic, you think, Mike? With putting on your realistic hat, what is realistic the rest of the year for the Saints?
This has always been my belief, that if something happened to Jameis Winston, he is going to ride the Taysom Hill train. Taysom's his guy. I think he almost feels like he was the guy that sort of invented. And he really did. He's a unique athlete in that you cannot compare Taysom Hill to any other player in the NFL for his skill set. And Sean has always believed that he can throw the football well enough to be a really good starter. And yet, because I've seen him at practice and enough games that he doesn't have the accuracy, skills, and the touch to do it week in, week out. Not saying he can't do it every once in a while, but week in, week out, I don't see it. I don't see it. So if Hill is healthy, he is going to ride the Taysom Hill train.
Wow.
Through the season. And Trevor Siemian be the backup. Now, I mean, they got all kind of crazy stuff. People want to throw this name out and that name out and everything else. I think he's going to stay in-house and with the three guys he's got, with Taysom Hill, with Trevor Siemian, and also with Ian Book. It is difficult to bring in, unless you have an elite talent, it is difficult for a guy to come in and mid-season he starts from scratch and pick all this up. It's because it's like learning a foreign language. You coming in here and understanding the terminology and everything else. So I think he's going to ride it through with the three guys he has.
Oh, okay. I don't think Taysom Hill's an NFL quarterback, but Sean Payton knows more than I do. Okay.
Well, I've seen enough to know it that he's an NFL quarterback, but is he a starting quarterback? Okay, there's a difference there. There's a difference, and his accuracy skills and his touch that isn't there. Listen, they had people that was waving that flag all off season about it, but come on, I don't know exactly what they were seeing or what they weren't seeing, but your eyes aren't lying to you about it. He doesn't quite have the right touch on throws.
And he's almost, 32? I mean, he is what he is, right?
Yeah, to be a consistent guy doing it. Now, again, he is skilled in that, man, you talk about a power runner. He brings that to the table. And, you can play him so many different positions. He can play on special teams. He's a valuable player, but as a starting quarterback, no, that's not it. And you're going to see the inconsistent nature in his play. Now, again, some people who they've tried to convince themselves that Hill's the guy this offseason, found out that, he just wasn't. He's not that type of individual. Now, I want him on my football team because, boy, he can help me in so many different ways. But as a starting quarterback, you're going to ride the roller coaster.
Okay. All right. So because Sean is good enough and Mickey, Sean, and Ireland have put together this roster, you think they're good enough to hang in there and knock down a wild card berth?
Yeah, well, even before, I really believed they would be a 9-8 team. That they would come in right under 10 games. And I could see this team even today being a 10-win football team. If you get to 10, I think you're a wild card team. But that defense is good enough to get you there. Now, once you're there, how far you last, I'm not sure. But their defense is as good as any other time in the Sean Payton time frame. And I don't even think it's a debate anymore. That defense they have today is the best defense Payton has ever had here in New Orleans. And so I think he rides that.
Okay. Interesting. I can't wait to see what they do in the offseason. Ian Book, that sounds...
Well, I think it's going to revolve around the quarterback and wide receiver play this offseason. Because last year there were so many different elements because of you were over $100 million over the cap, and you having to make some critical cuts. And you knew this would be a younger football team with if someone went down, then a young man has to take over his place. It wasn't a veteran. Now this offseason is really centered around what happens at quarterback and what happens at wide receiver.
Okay.
It's going to be those two elements. Now, they do have some crucial decisions to make on what do you want to do with Marcus Davenport, who is as talented a player as they have. It's just that can he stay healthy for any length of time? You never have enough covered people. That part of the game is still there. Marcus Williams, what do you do with him at that point in time? But there aren't a lot of huge holes other than the quarterback position and at wide receiver. Where, man, wide receiver, because we know the names, but if you went to New York or Los Angeles and Chicago and asked, other than Michael Thomas, name me the Saints wide receivers, you get a lot of head scratching.
Right. What is the latest on Michael Thomas?
I think he'll be back in a couple weeks. From what we are hearing, it looks as though it'll be a couple more weeks.
Okay.
Sean's been, man, anytime I ask, man, he's been sort of rough around the edges with it, that he doesn't even want to answer it. But from everything we're hearing, it looks as though he'll be back in a couple weeks.
Have Michael Thomas and Sean kissed and made up?
I don't know if that's ever going to be the case.
So that means Sean may ship him out, right?
What's that?
Do you think Sean eventually? I don't even know how the contract's structured, but you may. If they get to the point where they can take just a semi-bad hit on him, do you believe that he'll move Michael Thomas?
Well, because of the salary cap implications, it's going to be really hard to move him in 2022. Really hard.
Okay.
And, listen, Sean can take a lot of stuff, if you can play. And Michael Thomas can play.
Sure.
And he's made some comments in the past, not directed toward Michael Thomas, and that he learned a lot about player relationships through Bill Parcells. And that, Bill put up with, if you're really talented, you're willing to put up with a little bit more than you would the guy that's, he's just fighting and scratching to keep on himself on the roster each week. And, he knows that Michael Thomas is a very talented player, very talented. And somewhere along the line, yeah, you can have these sit-down meetings and talk to Mike, but does that really clear it up? Because, you can say all the right things. Now you got to do them. And I think the fact that he put this off, the surgery, for so long and basically kind of, roll the dice on the season with that, I think is a stick in the craw to Sean, and always will be.
Okay.
But you know what? This roster is littered with former Saints players that he has had a little bit of a tiff with one time or another. If it's been Malcolm Jenkins, if it's been Kenny Stills, if it's been Mark Ingram, if it's about finances or maybe, a little disagreement here or there, how they used. And Sean doesn't hold that for a long time. But, man, when you got a talent like Thomas, he's better on your team than he is somewhere else, or you're getting a middle-round pick for him. You know what I mean?
All right, Mike Detillier, Saints Insider, LSU Insider, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. He joins us on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line, number one American IPA in the country. Let's move to – do you have an LSU update for us? I mean, do you think there's been any movement or same top three where are you on the top three candidates that you think could be the top three candidates for Scott Woodward and LSU?
Well, I've said from the start, I think Scott will always swing for the fences. I think that if that coach is Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma, I think he wants that guy to tell him no. I've never thought Jimbo Fisher was the guy. Never. Only because I've been around some very prominent LSU alumni who give a lot of money to the school, and one of them referred to him as the football runaway bride. Every time you come, after him, he sort of wants to date, but, then he runs away at the end. And do we want to go down this road again? Because it's been twice. And I had one of them tell me that he has made it known to people at LSU, I'm not going down this road. Don't come ask for me. Don't come ask me for money for Jimbo Fisher. Won't happen. So I think that's normally how Scott does it. I think he did that in the baseball coaching search, where he went after a couple different people at Florida, at Tennessee. It didn't work. And he ended up with a really good coach. I think Johnson's a really good coach.
He is.
And so, but that wasn't his number one choice. And he had it wasn't a question of money. I think it was comfort. So I think he wants that. I know, I said this the day after Coach O got fired, that there are people at LSU that have pushed hard for Mel Tucker at Michigan State. And that's been a big push because they feel like Mel is this bright young coach who has ties here. He coached here at LSU, coached at Alabama, coached at Georgia, knows the recruiting area. They love what they see in him and his structure and discipline and how hard his teams play. And so I'm just telling you, I'll just repeat what I said a few weeks back. I think that Mel Tucker is a very, very, very strong candidate here at LSU.
Okay.
And the fact that he's bounced around, thing is, they got a lot of coaches like that, around college football that has bounced around. But I'll always remember something Mark Emmert told us, and this was days after he was the chancellor at LSU at that time. They hired Nick Saban. And I think Mark was in a prickly mood that day. He came on Sports Talk with Buddy Diliberto and I, and he sort of sounded the alarms that, listen, this is a really political state, and I get it. And I'm hearing a lot of people complain to me about our new head coach, that he has no ties to the South. This West Virginia coach who's coached in the Midwest. He's won no more than 9 games at Michigan State. If I'm wrong with this, blame me. But the same people that are screaming and hollering on talk shows, writing these columns, didn't have social media like we do today, that they will walk away from this and not leave one footprint in the beach sand. But I'm going to be right on Nick Saban. And I'll never forget that he was not in the best of moods that night, because I think someone with probably money or power at LSU was complaining to him about Nick. But guess what? You couldn't find that guy today with GPS. Because listen, that's the nature of the animal, so to speak. It's what drives what you do and now what I do going, people's opinions.
Sure.
Now, they can come on and or go on social media and use a fake name or their own name or whatever and say something. They can hit that delete button a year later and nobody knows nothing. It's lost. But I do think that Woodward is going to have to hold off some politically tied people that want their say in this head coaching search. Okay, if I give you $25 million a year, I want to say. And there is no more political state than Louisiana, believe me.
Yeah.
That you got people here that feel that you owe them something when you give them that check that they want to say. And it's one thing about the baseball coach or the women's basketball coach, and Kim is a tremendous coach, so no, not too many people had a yipe about that. People did have a yipe about Jay when they brought him in the process, and many people at LSU wanted Mike Bianco, and that was sort of a little bit of a coup there for a while. I think some people with cash were trying to do this in the scenes. Now, you won't hear that from columnists that will tell you they got all these connections, and they got zilch connections. It's secondhand information. But I do believe that Mel Tucker is a very strong candidate for this job. Not believe it, I know it, because I heard it from a couple people.
Mel Tucker, give me 3 names.
But I think he wants. I would not be surprised he has reached out to Lincoln Riley because of the way this state is built. There's a lot of pitch and catch talent here. Okay, Lincoln's going to coach in the SEC no matter what in a few years. How comfortable are you at Oklahoma? And his ability to develop talent at quarterback, the most important position on the field. I've always felt Lincoln's next move would be the NFL. That if he left OU, it wouldn't be to take another college job. It would be for an NFL job.
Okay.
And he's a young coach and that sort of thing, and they would have enough money that they could lure in a really good defensive-oriented defensive coordinator and a really good staff. But I think that's if you look at Woodward's resume after coaches, that's the way he's handled it. He wants that coach to tell him no. Okay, no, I'm happy here. I'm staying where I'm at. And maybe he's gotten that answer. Maybe he hasn't. But if he hasn't gotten a yes, I'm interested, then I think Tucker is a guy that people at LSU in prominent places want. And also there's a new president at LSU who has admitted that he has been involved in coaching searches in the past. So why wouldn't he be involved in this one?
Interesting. Usually presidents don't need to be involved in coaching searches, but we'll wrap it up there and continue the discussion.
When Mark was here, he was.
Well,
he was the chancellor at LSU. So it's done, let me put it maybe lightly, it's done differently here in Louisiana.
Right.
You know? If you catch my drift.
Yeah.
It's done a little bit different. And even though I think Woodward certainly is going to have major say, there are other things around you that you feel the swirl of the tornado and what happened into that. Because years ago, I know people who were prominent who wanted Steve Spurrier. They hired Mike Archer.
Good grief. Well, we'll leave it there. Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans on the Bell's Two-Hearted Ale guest line. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you, Bo.
All right. The show is brought to you by Sound and Communications, soundcomab.com. The leader in audio and visual equipment for businesses, churches, and sports facilities. SoundcomAB.com. SoundcomAB.com. Show is also brought to you by the Charbroiled Oysters at Drago's. Throw in some seafood gumbo. Jake Mangum coming up next. The Hit King live in the Bank Plus studio for the next hour. Jake Mangum live in studio. Coming up next.